Going to learn about the ethics in research and its role and the substance of reports. So let's begin with the term what is called a research ethics. Research ethics refers to all those core values, the standards, the rules that actually govern that how the research is to be expressed, how its research is to be planned, execute, and report to all the stakeholders. It defines the differences between the right and wrong in its research objectives, promote the accountability, fairness, and the transparency. In other words, we can say the research ethics refers the moral principles, the professional standards that govern the research it's entirely. So research ethics also gives a guarantee. You can say that a research is conducted fairly, truly, and honestly, being as a responsible researcher, which always denotes and holds the integrity, objectivity, transparency, accountability, and of course, it will disconduct the main part of it. This is a way that how it could be arranged in a order and in a way that gives an importance in its a research study. That's a way that it gives a research study a more irrelevant way. So this is how it is important that it helps to avoid any misconduct such as you can say plagiarism, you can say falsifications and credibility, and of course the inworthiness. And it is important that the knowledge of research or that how the researcher is to be created after its approval, and that to be a more relevant part. In fact, a good research is also gives a public image and builds a environment of the honest scholarship in an academia. Now we can come up to the key elements of the research ethics. The first one is honesty. Research must not plagiarize, falsify, and misinterpret the data, the procedures, and the research and results in the research. Truthfulness reporting contributes to their trust and academic integrity. The next one is objectivity. Avoiding the personal basis or conflict of interest should always guide the research decisions. And of course, the objectives are the most important, you can say, part of any of the research studies that creates the reliability and the neutrality, you can say, in findings. The next element is integrity. The integrity of the researchers is always reflects the consistent, you can say, sincerity with their commitment, with their devotions towards the research. Consistency in action and decisions is always reflects the legality of the academic credibility. Next one is the carefulness. Researchers should avoid the mistakes, the care, and the diligent documentation, and of you can see the other part of necessary you can say equipments and the controlled, which always ensure the reproductivity and avoidability. Next one is open sharing. The sharing of data, ideas, and the results, which always encourage the peer verification and the collective progress in academic research. Next one is confidentiality. All personal data or sensitive information from the participant which has been collected must be kept confidential and secure. Any breaches of confidentiality have found it may lead to a legal and ethical consequences. Next one is the responsible publication. Publishing, of course, it's a new platform which always gives the academic researchers which enhance their knowledge rather than one personal benefit. So you can talk about the preventing the plagued self-plagiarism or academic plagiarism, which always holds the authenticity of the academic records. Next one is respect for colleagues and mentorship. So when we talk about the environment, there should be a healthy environment which always be conducive to research and developed through the fair treatment and mentoring of peers, and mentors which always support and gives a pure expertise knowledge which reflects their ethical behavior among juniors. Next section is the importance of research ethics. The first importance is protecting the human participants. There is always a provision for the voluntary, informed consent and appropriate understanding for the purpose, as it is the main purpose of the research ethics is all about to protect, to keep confidential, and always keep a concern from the participant to whom you are actually including in your research study. So it is important to take a concern before participation, and that actually called an ethical research. So the ethical research must ensure that the people make informed, independent choices protected from the interference. Next one is ensuring data integrity. Ethics is always prevent manipulation and fabrication of data, as ethics is always told us that what is right and wrong, that we don't need to self-terrorized, and always keep an authentic you can say document, research document publicly. Same here as well. Ethics is always prevent the manipulation, the self-terrorism, fabrication of data, and how you analyze its data ethically. So research findings through authenticity are dependable, and of course should be added to a scientific knowledge, and accordingly presenting the data is also the one of the significant factor which could be factual and error free, and it avoids the misleading information and conclusion. So the data integration is very much important in maintaining the accounting credibility against the public. Next importance is the promoting fairness and justice. Every participant involved in research study must receive an equitable treatment. Any sort of discrimination in selection process of the participants, of course, that gives a misled results and produce a serious unethical dilemma. So fair selection is always guaranteed that the benefits and the risks are to be shared equally when it comes to the precious social context of India, who prevents the social and economic basis to outcome in research. Next one is the fostering transparency and accountability. Transparency provides for reclaimability, and the peer evaluation process is to be considered in a particular research study which reveals the vital characteristic of the research scholars' excellence and accountability, and makes the researchers more answerable for their research conduct and standards. And the last important is building public trust. Public trust becomes more critical, especially when it concerns sensitive data and data required through public funding. So ethical research always performs a great deal to instill a good image of science and academic efforts in front of public institutions, in front of public consciousness. The reputation of the institution will be raised, and of course the period of extension will also be granted to the academic project with the support of the public trust. Now we can come up to the next section, that is the advantages of research ethics. The first one is it protects participants. It always safeguards the rights, the dignity, the welfare of the individuals involved in studies. It enhances the trust as well. The research ethics build trust between the researchers, participants and the public, so that they will get a financial support for the research. Next is promote research integrity. It ensures research is conducted with honesty, with accuracy, with how it reduces the misconduct, the pluralism, favorism of data and its standards. Next is increases credibility. It makes the research finding more credible, more trustworthy, and which is crucial for the scientific advancement and innovation. And the last one is it ensures accountability. Research ethics always holds the researchers, the public institution or the private institutions who are responsible to answers for their actions and ethical conducts. The next section is the limitations of research ethics. The first one is potential for harm. So research may still you can say pose a risk rather relate to the political, psychological and the social risk is also involved in case of participants with their ethical guidelines. Next one is resource allocation. It also focuses on ethical consideration which ultimately divert the resources from other pressing the health or the research needs. It is also the one of the major limitation that it focus on more other resources which is somehow irrelevant to the research. Next one is conflicting goals. There could be a tension between achieving the valuable aims of the research and adhering to ethical standards that protect participants. So somehow the conflicts always exist and creates a tension between the you can say ethical standards of to protect participants and of course to fulfill the valuable aims of the objectives. Next limitation is a complexity. So ethical norms and standards can be complex. It could be difficult to adopt in the research study, and of course it could be difficult to include in the interest of the public. Next is principles of research ethics. The first one is the beneficence. It refers to maximize the benefits for the participants. So the participants who are included in the research study, they should get the maximum benefits and the society. Of course, the more and more benefit also being to the society while minimizing the potential harm to them. Next one is respect for autonomy. Recognizing individual rights to make voluntary and informed decision is also the one of the principle when it comes about the participants. So it is always important to understand that what could be an individual rights, whether they would mainly to participate voluntary or not, or concern is to be considered before participation in the study. Next one is justice. Fair distribution would be possible about the benefits, about the burden of the research, the funding, and it is really need to avoid the exploitation of the vulnerable groups. Next one is informed consent. Participants are fully informed about the research, how it would goes process, how the information is to be kept confidential, and volunteer should agree to participate. Next is anonymity and the confidentiality. It's protect the participant private information and identity, to keep secrecy of all those information which are to be included in the research. And the last one is integrity. Conducting research with honesty, transparency, objectivity are also equivalent to conduct a reliable research. Now we can come up to the steps involved in research. The first step is to identify the ethical problem. So it is also recognized that the ethical standards and norms always exist where the value of interest conflict. So when there is a conflict in the values and the interest of the, you can say, participants, then definitely there would an ethical dilemmas, or you can say norms or governance is always come up. It always been recognized, and that's why it is important to identify the problems, ethical problems. Next one is, once the researcher identify the ethical problems, now the next step is to gather the facts, collect all the relevant information and facts which is related to the situation or any other you can say event, and considering or and you can say it is also important to concern with all the stakeholders to understand their views, different perspectives, you can say different opinions, and then accordingly collect all the relevant information which are very useful for the research. Next step is identify stakeholder. Now the next question or the next step is to how to determine that who will be affected by the decision and what their concern and interests are. So this is also the one of the ethical you can say step, that to identify the stakeholders who are not being affected for any decision and what would be their concern and interest are. So they should conduct a formal meeting to determine or to investigate that who will be affected and what are their concerns. Next one is generate alternatives. Brainstorm potential courses of action or solution to the problem is must. So once you gathered all the facts, identify the stakeholder, now what would be the concern and issues, once you will find out, then the next step is generate alternative, find out the solution of that problems which could be you can say handle for the future. Next one is evaluate the alternatives. Consider the potential consequences of each alternative and evaluate them against ethical standards and principles. It is very important that once you find out the solutions, it is also the next step is also equivalent to find out the you can say to evaluate the consequences against the ethical standards and principles like utilitarian, maximizing good, rights approach, that is entitlements, justice, that is fairness. So this is how the solution could also be compared or into an evaluation process with ethical standards and principles. Next is make a decision and test it. So once you have find out the alternative, you have evaluate that alternative, now the decision is now it's time to take a decision and test that decisions in the market. So choose the best ethical alternative or solution and consider its potential positive and the negative effects. Next is implement the decision. Put the right action into effect, which gives a more, you can say, peaceful and meaningful results, and then communicate that decision and then take necessary steps. And the next step is reflect on the outcome. So after implementation, review the results and the decision impact to learn and improve the future ethical decision making in the process. Now we can come up to the next concept, that is, what is research misconduct. Research misconduct, or you can say a scientific misconduct, refers to all those actions and behaviors by the researcher that actually fail to honor the integrity of research. That means they use a pluralism aspect, they use the facilitation of the data and its process or analysis process in a wrong or illegal way, and that's become a research misconduct. So it's all about action and behavior of the researchers which actually failed to view the fairness and the honestness in the research. So the Office of Research Integrity defines the research misconduct as the facilitation, fabrication, or the pluralism in conducting, planning and reporting or reviewing research. A research misconduct, you can say, is also all about creating the names and details of the survey participants for the purpose of generating. It's called a manipulation of creating a data that also leads to an unethical research practice. A false data, a fake data has been generated and used in the researches. That also called a research misconduct. Now we can come up to the next section, that is the types of research misconduct. The first one is fabrication. It refers to a practice of making up the data without having any required research. So if any of the researchers is practicing just generating the data, preparing the data for own way, that's also become a fabrication. So research misconduct covers not only the act of the fabrication but also sharing, discussing, publishing the fake data or results. That also one of the types of research misconduct. Next is falsification. This type of scientific misconduct is a willful manipulation of data, material, information, process, equipment to serve a meaningful conclusion. One of the example is selecting, omitting or changing data which results, you can say, erroneous representation of research results is also the one of the type of falsification, as everything is manipulating. Every data, every process is manipulated by the researcher, and that is also the one of the type of such unethical practice. Next one is pluralism. Pluralism is also the one of the common type of the scientific misconduct, and it's all about when you are copying the person ideas, the thoughts, the content writing, the process, the results as well. That is also considered as a research misconduct. And it's also include the self-pluralism when you replicate your own writing. That means the articles that you have written, you have published, you are using the same content writing, same process, same equipment in your new study. That is also called a self-pluralism. That means you are not providing any proper credit in your new study as well. Next one is authorship. This type of scientific misconduct in research include or attempt to assign the false authorship without any adequate contribution to the research. As if I have written any article and I am including the others author's name which have not contributed to my research, it becomes a one of the type of research misconduct, and that's called authorship. So this is something that include the author's name without their concern, and that also called authorship, one of the type of misconduct. It fails to include the authors who are original contributors. So that is also the one of the example of misconduct. Next is conflict of interest. This can be classified under the journal scientific misconduct, and of course it's lapse by the researcher in declaring any conflict of interest in their research work. There could be a conflict in the authorship, there could be a conflict in the organization's participation, there could be a conflict in terms of organizational fundings among the authors, there could be a conflict of the self-funding by the authors. So this is also the misconduct where the conflict of interest in their research work, and these conflict could be the personal, could be the financial, could be the professional, and could be the social, and it need to be reported to avoid any ethical issues. So this is also the one of the type of research misconduct. And the last one is approvals. One of the most important aspect of research is approval, that includes human or animal subjects which adhere to all the ethical approvals or legal guidelines. So if any research is not followed with such ethical mandate, it considered a serious type of research misconduct. Now, what are the reasons that involve for committing the research misconduct? There could be a reasons that why the researchers, why the individuals are actually doing misconduct in research. These are the reasons. First one is the career pressure. It is also the important factor which is associated with the research misconduct, that is undue pressure the researchers face. They need to conduct the original research in a very less time, and then they have to go for a peer-reviewed journals or need funding for their research projects in advance. This is something in undue pressure which gives a chance to do a misconduct in their researches. Next one is researchers' personal psychology. Some of the researchers is overly driven by a desire that it is better to quickly finish our researches in a very professional way, and due to a strong professional reputation, or you can say gain any financial you can say advantage, definitely they push them to a research misconduct. Lack of appropriate training and skills. Somehow this is also the one of the reasons of the committing research misconduct. And the lack of training and skills is definitely a conflict the ethical guidelines, or you can say issues or practices. And when it comes to the training and skills which is need to be followed by the researchers, and those who are not even aware about it, and those who are not even skilled and trained, that term, or you can could be another reason for research misconduct. Next is insufficient supervision or mentoring. So related to the point which has been stated earlier, this also relate to all those situations where the researchers, especially the early career researchers, is failed to receive an adequate supervision or mentorship which is in affiliated institutions. So a lack of oversight and guidance definitely leads to a research misconduct. Next is inadequate knowledge. The scientific misconduct can occur if the researcher does not have sufficient knowledge on the topic or the subject. As a result, they just become carelessness and conduct research, and that leads to a misconduct. The next section is proposal. What is exactly the proposal is? The proposal is a formal or a written plan that suggests us, you can say, different sort of alternatives, a course of actions which reflects the idea and request and mainly finding to solve a problem for a reader or group. The main purpose of the proposal is to inform and convince a reader to approve the proposed plan or project, which clearly outlines the goals, the objectives, the method, the cost, or any sort of funding, and what would be the contribution to the society. So the key components of the proposal is typically include the title page, the introduction, the background, the methodology, timeline, budget, conclusion through the various formats accordingly, university to university. This is a proposal format. The first one is the title page, which includes the proposal title, your name or organization, or the recipient information. Table of content, it provides an overview of the proposal structure and content. Next is introduction and abstract. It also briefly summarizes the problem and opportunity of such, you can say, proposed proposal and associated with its benefits. Background and problem statement. It also describes the issues the proposal aims to resolve or have an opportunity to, you can say, exploit. Next is proposed solution and methodology. So details of the plan of action underline the specific steps, timeline, and required resources that could be, you can say, include in the research methodology. Next is goals and objectives. Should clearly state or define the project goals to achieve. Next one is budget. Outline the estimated cost and the financial resources needed. Team and personnel. Identify the individuals involved and their roles. Benefits and value proposition. Explain why such project is valuable and what would be their expected outcomes that it could deliver. Next is conclusion. Briefly, you can say, show or write up the main points and make call to action. Appendixes and the glossary include the supporting documents, the, you can say, schematics, and any technical terms that supplements the main text. That is exactly the format of the proposal. The next part is the category of reports. The first one is the information reports. So information reports are the workhorses of the organizational communication. So until the reports which includes each and every information, which is called a workforce of all those organizations for the purpose of peaceful, meaningful and peaceful communication, that document is called information report. Such document indicates what happened, when it occurred, who was involved without necessary, you can say, pushing for a specific action. So it is important for the report to think all of these aspects, give a detailed description that preserves the important organizational knowledge. And that's why information includes the 6 W's and 1 H framework. 6W is what, when, where, why, and who, and 1H is how. So when we talk about this framework is actually involved into information reports. Who identify who will be the stakeholder, who will be the participants, who are the you can say affected parties. So if this is not included in the report, the names are not included, that could not be considered as an information report. So it is also important to include the understanding, their understanding, objectives, roles, the responsibility, the relationship with the situations. Next, what? Describe the event, any situation, any phenomenon in a constraint terms, and interpretation are actually stick to the observable facts and the measurable outcomes. When it provides a precise timing information, and this includes not just the data and the times, but also includes the sequences, the duration, the patterns, so that they can work and sounds relevant. Next is where. Specify the location, the departments, the markets, any geographical locations, any other boundaries, or any in relation to the any organization or industries that matters to understand the exact situation. Why? Explain the background, the context, and the underlying reason which relates to the situation, and it also gives the reader a broad picture about the situation. Which clarify which specific processes, products, services, systems are involved, which helps to avoid confusion when it comes to a similar situation exists. And the last is 1H, that is how. Detailed the methods, the processes, the mechanism through which events unfolded, and this procedural information proves valuable for the future references. It's all about that what sort of methods, what methodology would be used, how the mechanism or equipments could be used, and that these particular information will be a bonus or a valuable for our future references. Let's take an example. Imagine you are documenting a product launch event. An information report would capture attendance figure, who, describe the activities and presentation, what, note the date and duration when, specify the venue where, and explain the strategic reasoning behind the launch timing, why, and identify which product line was featured which, and detail the event format and logistic how. That could, when such all of these 6 W's and 1 how, the information has been given related to any situation or event or any phenomenon, that's become the information report. Now we can come up to the next reports called a decision reports, or in other words we could use here the problem solving approach. When organization facing choices or decision reports provide a complex situation, and the first one is the problem identification. It is very important that to identify the problem, to identify the concern, it's clearly define the issue in hand. what specific challenge requires a decision, what could be an action needed now, whether this section automatically establish an urgency and the importance of its own. Next one is the situation analysis. It is very important to examine the current situation and like what factors contribute to the problem, what would be the constraints exist in it. This analytical foundation prevents the solution that ignores the important realities. Next is alternative generation. Brainstorm is also the one of the aspect that develops the multiple potential solutions. So it's all about the plenty of ideas come up, but it is important to what ideas relate to the situation and event, and from the among the list of the ideas choose the best one. The next step is the evaluation criteria. Once the alternative generation process has been done, then establish the standard and choose which alternative could relate to it, and then it could be judged. Cost, time, feasibility, risk, strategic alignments are very common criteria, but each situation requires a unique considerations. Next one is alternative analysis. Systematically, it also a process to evaluate each option against the ethical guidelines or standards. So automatically use the matrix, performance measurement matrix, scoring systems, any other tools which makes comparison more transparent and objective. And next is recommendation. Based on your analysis and recommend the best course of action. It is equally important to work on it and explain why this option outperforms the alternative and address the potential objections. Implementation planning. Outline the steps, or you can say related, how to execute such recommendations in real, who will do, what will do, by whom, and what resources are actually required. Consistency planning. So anticipate what could be wrong and prepare the backup plans, and that becomes the consistency planning. For example, consider a company deciding whether to expand into a new market. A decision report would identify the growth challenges, analyze the market condition trends, company capabilities, present options like you can say the organic growth versus acquisition, evaluate each segment performance matrices like ROI or any other strategic fit, recommend the best approach, and then go for the implementation steps and outline the consistency plans for the various scenarios. So this is how you take a one situation and apply that situation, relate that situations in all of the steps, and that could be one of the real examples of such you can say decision reports. Next is research reports. That means your knowledge building foundation. Research reports represents the most rigorous category because it presents a systematic investigation to advance your understanding, your knowledge to resolve a complex situation or problem. So it needs a credible knowledge that informs the future decision and actions in the organization. So research reports follows an academic standards which is adopted by the business scenarios. Literature review. Survey all the existing knowledge on your topic, that what have others have discovered, what would be the gap in your and others studies. This is something the literature review you can say reveals. Next is research question and objectives. It should clearly define you can try to discover and prove a good research questions which should be specific, measurable and relevant to the organizational needs. Its methodology. It also explains that how you conducted your investigation and what data did you collect and how did you collect it, what analytical methods to be used, what would be the source of collection, what sort of transparency allow others to evaluate, how much the potential to replicate your work in a few days. So this is a sort of methodology that could be utilized. Next is finding presentation. Report what you discovered to an objective in an organized manner. Even the researcher can use the tables, chart, graphs and make more complex data accessible. It is important for a researcher to distinguish the facts and interpretation. Next is analysis and interpretation. Explain what your findings mean, how do the answers about the study, about your research questions, what sort of patterns or relationship the researcher observed, and this is where the raw data transforms into an actionable insights. Next is conclusion and implication. Summarize all your key discoveries and their significance and what are the broader implication for the organization or field of study. Next is recommendation. So based on your research finding, suggest any specific recommendation or suggestion or any scope for the future studies that should flow logically from your analysis. Limitation and assumptions. Acknowledge the boundaries of your research. Just state the factors which mightly affect the generalizability of your findings, and such honesty enhances the credibility of your research. Let's take an example to understand the research report. Research report investigating the customer satisfaction might review the existing satisfaction. So the researcher could work on the literature which always reflects the specific questions about service quality, its factors, then describe the survey methodology, the statistical analysis techniques that present the satisfaction scores, correlation data, then interpreted the relationship between the any service elements and satisfaction level, and then conclude the factors matter most, and then recommend any service improvement, and then acknowledge limitation like sample size or regional focus. So if you're conducting any study in Delhi, it could be a regional limitation, that it is focused in Delhi only, why the other state has not been considered. So this is something, one of the limitation could be a regional restrictions. Next is reviewing the draft. So to review the draft, the researcher must be critically analyze the early version of a piece of writing so that the expertise team could provide the feedback, identify the areas for further improvement, whether it would be a book, email or plan. So key steps to understand the you can say document purpose and background information. So it is important to critically analyze its extent, providing the specific facts and reasons to support your research and offering the suggestions for further enhancement or you can say corrections. So steps to review a draft. Understand the purpose, that what would be the purpose of you reviewing your manuscript or draft. So this is how well, it totally depends how well you prepared your draft. Identify the key themes and arguments. So you also look up the main ideas or arguments of the authors, that they should be clearly stated and well supported. Then analyze the content. There you have the researcher have to see that there should be a clarity and conjunction. Check if the writing is easily to understand or not. It should be logically, and it flows logically from one point to another. Next is accuracy. Verify all the facts and information which are presented to be correct and well sourced. Evidence and support. Examine if the author opinions or the points are backed by convincing any evidence or clear reasoning. Provide constructive feedback. Be specific. Give a concrete examples and mention a specific section that's strong and need improvement. Highlight the strength. Acknowledge what the author did well to encourage and guide them. Suggest improvement. If any corrections or modification is to be done, then it could offer an actionable recommendation on how to enhance the writing part. Then next is conclude with the recommendation. So based on your review, provide a final opinion and recommendation regarding the draft, readiness and the future steps. What to focus on? The researcher has to focus on the structure and the organization. Is the information presented in a logical order or not? Clarity of argument is also important. Is the main message is clear? Are the supporting details are effective to give a strong evidence into an argument or to the argument? Tone and style. Is the tone appropriate for the audience? Is the writing skill encouraging and consistent? Next is area of development. What are the main areas where the draft could be improved? Are there gaps or logic or information missed? Author purpose. So what is the main goal of the project? It is to inform or persuade or recommend or analyze the something else. So this is something, the purpose of the author must also to be revealed. Reader profile. Who is intended audience? Who are the intended audience? Their level of knowledge, interest or experiences must reveals their style and the level of details are actually needed or not. Content. Is the information accurate, relevant or complete? Does it support the author purpose and meet the reader's needs? Are there any logical gap or inconsistencies involved in the research or not? So this is something to work on it. This is something to write on it. Language and tone. Is the language clear and concise and appropriate for the audience? So these are the questions that need to focus on. Any glitches, any jargon, any technical are the unnecessary words or terms, and it makes the language more complex. Length. Is the report the right length for the topic and the reader attention span? So it is a concise and the focused, you can say an overview, you can say rambling, which it also needs to consider a detail required and the time constraint the reader might have. Appearance. Is the report visually appealing and easy to read? So this is something, it's all about the structure, it's all about the formatting, headings, charts, graphs and overall layout. So this is something that the researcher need to focus on and accordingly follow any formatting guidelines specified by the organization and institutions. Additional consideration, we talk about structure. This should be with a clear introduction, you can say clear conclusion and findings. So are their headings or subheadings really guide the reader? Citations and the references. So the report always include the research or data from other sources. So it's clearly cite that references in a very format or style and according to the appropriate style guide. Proofreading and editing. So for a polished final product, check for the grammatical mistakes or any type or any, you can say, inconsistencies, and this include ensuring the clarity and the coherence and the correct image of the language. Next is quality of a good report. The first one is accuracy. So it present the facts, data and findings correctly and without disorder. Information should be verified by the reliable sources and evidence. Next is clarity. It uses the simple and understandable language, avoid any jargon, technical terms or any, you can say, ambitious statements. Consciousness, deliver the essential information in a few words, make it in a short, provide a complete picture of the issue without increasing the length to read. Objectivity, present the information based on the logic and evidence, not on emotions or personal judgments. Relevance, focus on the central purpose of the report and address the key issues in the study. Exclude the irrelevant information that confuse the reader. Completeness, provide all the necessary information to the reader. Organization and presentation, features all the logical structure with a neat and appealing and layout including headings and subheadings. Next is reader orientation. It always consider the intended audience. What would be our audience? It always gives a description, a detailed accordingly. Next is evidence and you can say and evidence. So it includes the factual data and associated or with respective examples to support the claim, and the conclusions build a foundation of a reliable judgment in a research. Next is limitation of a research report. The first one is a methodological limitation. Of course, there could be a flaws in the scope, research design, data collection methods, measurement tools that ultimately affect the study quality and data reliability. Next is resource limitation. There are various factors which always impose, like a lack of time, funding, equipment, participant availability, which of course restrict the scope and the depth of the research. Next is sample related limitation. So inadequate sample size could be a non-responsive sample that fails the adequacy of the research, which reflect the target population, limit the generalizability of the findings. This is how these limitations would also exist in our research study. Theoretical limitations, there are factors like theoretical framework could also be lacking, which limit the depth and scope of its applicability. Ethical limitations also there are restrictions related to obtaining information or obtaining in concern from the participant, ensure that the data confidentiality or assess a sensitive information. And the last one is scope limitation. Inherent restrictions on the parameter of the study exploration. It results from the broadly formulated research objectives. So somehow if the scope of the study will not match, it's not cleared with the objectives or main objectives of the study, then of course it could be one of the limitation called a scope limitation. That's it for today. Thank you so much for listening this lecture. I will come up to a more and more interesting and relevant topics in the upcoming session. So till time, thank you and namaste to all.